Hey, welcome to Faith and Future Reinvention podcast. I am Dr. Kay Hadley. I'm your Faith and Future Reinvention architect, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you for your patience. We experienced technical difficulties. There is an ice storm outside, so my internet has been going on and off throughout the day. So I'm so glad I had this opportunity to record this, and you'll have an opportunity. I will send the link out so you guys can review it because I don't want you to miss not one episode. All right. So in our last episode, we talked about the loudest critic in the room, which is your mind. We flagged our thoughts, our experiences, and those influences, past and present, right? That has affected the way that we think or respond to anything that's positive in our mind, anything about visions or dreams or goals where we don't act upon it, right? We don't move forward. So we named it, we quieted it by replacing those negative thoughts with something that we know is true, right? And for me, I always test my thoughts against the word of God for me because that's my faith, right? What does God say, right? What does the word of God say? Um, Align with this thought. Is it in alignment or is not in alignment? Is the thoughts that I'm having or the responses to anything that I'm thinking about doing, building, creating, you know, maybe it's a new business, upskilling, getting a new job, whatever it is, getting a home for myself, investing, whatever it is, when those thoughts come up, we have to flag them and make sure, excuse me, that um, we are identifying where those thoughts are coming from. And if those thoughts or that response is propelling us forward or causing us to stand still or just keeping us in a stronghold state. All right. And after we do all of this work of flagging it and naming it and then quieting the loudest critic, which is our mind, right? Um, Something interesting happens when the noise settles, when the fear loses its grip, right? The stronghold it has on us. And a new question often arises to the surface, and that is, okay, what's my next step? For me, I would say, okay, God, what's next? All right, you got my attention. I'm not shouting, I'm not demanding it. I'm just asking this question openly and honestly with sincerity and with intention. All right. So perhaps this is where many people might find themselves right now. And if that's you, please put in the chat, that's me. All right. Or just respond wherever you are, wherever you're listening, if that's you. This episode is for people who are standing in between, right? What am I talking about? In between this space, this season where maybe something has ended. Maybe a role has shifted, a season has closed, and a version of you no longer fits in this season. But the next chapter hasn't fully revealed itself yet. So you know something has ended and there's something more, right? But it hasn't, that door hasn't opened, right? That chapter hasn't started, and you feel like you're at a standstill. And you're asking the question, what is next? You know you can't go back, right? Going back is a no-no, right? We learn, we take a look back, a retrospective, right? Of what experiences that we had and what are those nuggets of wisdoms, those lessons learned that we have realized and know that going forward, how we can do things better, right? Or how we can better identify or discern when something is not right for us, right? So, or the experiences that we have, the good, bad, and the ugly, all of it, you should be able to find some type of lesson or wisdom within those experience, right? So we're talking about the space where Something's ended, but we don't know what's ahead, right? Because not it hasn't been revealed. We know we can't go back, but we're not sure how to step forward. If that's you, just say it out loud so that your mind can hear it, right? I'm not sure how to step forward, but I know I can't go back. And let me say this clearly to you. This space that you're in now or this current season is not a space for failure or delay. It's all about transition. We're transitioning from season to season, from this open door to the closed door to another open door. It's all transition. That all requires going forward. Um, we, I know right now. Let me just say this. I have a lot of thoughts in my mind. The transition also it often feels uncomfortable, and I think that is the culprit here, right? We're okay with doors closing that need to be closed, for sure. And then we're looking forward to what's ahead, and not knowing what's ahead, it makes us feel uncomfortable, right? Because nothing is moving. We're not hearing anything. It's quiet, and we're so unsure, right? That confidence is not there, right? But I can say, um, being in this uncomfortable season is uncomfortable, but it's going to require a level of trust without clarity. And so here's my visual around it, right? Because I have gone through that the latter part of 2025, and now I'm in 2026, and I do have some clarity of the next step or two that I need to take. But I do know that when you're in that in between state or season, it's like driving in a car. You get to the stop sign, there's a red light, and you know how you're trying to look ahead. You're steering right ahead, right? If you're going straight, and pretty much you have visibility. It might be a sunny day. On those sunny days, you can see clearly, but in this season, in this space, I cannot see beyond the traffic light because there's nothing but a thick fog that is ahead. All right. And so I have no idea what's waiting in the fog. I can't see it. And so that's my visual of being in this state. It feels uncomfortable because I can't see anything. I don't know anything. It's quiet. It requires me to just trust the process, trust this period of transition without having clarity. All right. Here's one of the biggest misconceptions I think we carry. And this is a thought that might pop up in our mind. Once I'm clear on the next steps, then I'll know how to, and if I know the outcome, then I'll know how to move. So once I'm clear on the next steps, or I know what the outcomes is going to be, right? You know, what the output is going to be, what the manifestation of what has been prepared just for me, designed just for me, that is waiting just for me, right? Then I'll be able to move. But faith doesn't usually work that way. All right. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. With that being said, you don't see the manifestation right now, but you have to believe as though it has manifested. And when it is realized, right, then we know that we held out our faith, we believe, and now we can see what we were believing for right now. All right. So faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen right now. All right. But more often, clarity follows obedience. All right. I'm gonna say that. So if you're hearing in your mind that, all right, you need to sign up for this class, you need to ramp up in these skills because AI is moving rampantly upon the land, and you know, you're going to need some AI skills or skills on how to utilize AI, right, to get you to the next step. And I'm just throwing something out there, right? Now, the clarity for me will follow once I obey. Now, the first thought that might pop up in my mind when I have that type of thought is, okay, well, how much is this going to cost me, right? For this AI training, and what if I just can't understand or adapt to what AI is all about, or don't really understand how to utilize it, or something happens and I can't finish the training. Okay, I'm giving you that idea of how our mind flags things, right? But obedience will, once you're obedient, clarity will follow and you can see things more clearly, right? So, God rarely hands us the entire blueprint. And I don't, maybe somebody has in a testimony. And if you do, feel free to share that testimony that you always get all the details up front. You know the entire blueprint. Um, and you just go about your life knowing everything, right? Having all the details. But God doesn't usually hands us the entire blueprint. And I think oftentimes we can't handle it, right? It's too much at one time for us, right? There's a development process in the transition itself. Instead, God offers the next step. And for many people that might feel unsettling, right? Because we want certainty, we want confirmation, no doubt, we want reassurance, that we won't make a mistake, right? That we won't make the wrong move, that, if we know something is going to happen or we're going to have some type of confrontation or some challenges or some conflicts, we don't want any of that. We just want it given to us and we just want to sail along, but it doesn't work that way, right? Faith doesn't say, here's the whole plan, is what I'm getting to. And faith often says, take the next step that's in front of you. That is faith. Just take the next step that's in front of you. That's going to get you to the next step and the next step and the next steps. All right. So let's talk honestly about the waiting, because the in between is transition, but there is that period of waiting for what's next, whatever that next step is. All right. And there's two kinds of waitings, there's waiting in fear. All right. And waiting in faith. Waiting in fear sounds like, what if I get this wrong? What if I'm wasting my time? What if I miss the open door or God's will? Whereas faith will sound a little bit like this, right? I trust, and you have to say that out loud, I'm being guided, even if it's quiet right now. I don't need the full picture to be obedient. And stillness doesn't mean that I'm stagnant, right? Waiting in faith doesn't mean that everything has to rush, right? It's a it's a microwave season where we're going to rush right through this whole process. You're going to see the manifestation right away. Boom. No. But waiting in faith doesn't mean that you freeze as well. So you got that? It's not a rush thing, waiting in faith. But it also doesn't mean that nothing is happening while you're waiting. All right. Remember talking about the transition and what you need to do to ramp up or get yourself ready for when that door opens or when you're taking that next step, right? So, faith, waiting in faith requires that you stay attentive and that you stay open and that you stay willing. Okay. You don't want to lose that, like, I'm also forget that. I'm too old. I'm over 40. You know, I don't see these good things happening for me. And you will have to flag that thought when it comes up. Like, why do you think that way? All right. And why do you think it has to be a limitation on what has been preordained or designed just for you, right? Prepared just for you, right? Just for you, right? All right. So we know divine direction is often quiet, right? Or just knowing what direction that we're heading into, right? It can be quiet at times. We often expect, I know through my faith, often I might expect God at times to speak through like loud signs, big confirmation, make it as clear as possible. As a matter of fact, God, if you can just stand right here in front of me, hold a big sign up, I'll get it. Right? Make it so clear and visible, or have somebody come by and just pinch me. Make it clear and make sure that the instructions are unmistakably right clear. So that might be an expectation where it would be nice if if signs were that clear, right? But, it's oftentimes it's quiet. It's um, more than often, you might experience what I call nudges. So, those little nudges could be a reoccurring thought, all right? You had the thought and you didn't apply the 5-second rule, which we're gonna talk about that shortly, and there was an action, there was not an action right after that 5-second countdown, and you just let it go. Like, that was nothing. And then somewhere along the line, that same thought comes up again. And you're like, again, you don't do anything and you let it go, but it keeps reoccurring. What is that? So you need to pay attention to what that reoccurring thought is that may be that step to prepare you to propel you forward. And it could be like a gentle pull, a door that keeps opening slightly, a restlessness that you might have that won't leave. Oftentimes for me, um, when or just recently, I'll just say when I went through a season where a door closed and I needed to know what the next step to prepare forward to the next door, right? Or the next step that the Lord wanted me to take. And I did get like a restlessness. And for me, it felt like, the Lord would wake me up all times throughout the night. And when he would wake me up, I would pretty much just write notes. Like I keep a book, little notebook and pen near my bed, and I'll just write down what I think I'm hearing, um, what thoughts are coming to my mind, and I'll spend some time writing, right? Then I go back to sleep and I might even wake up again, or I'll just feel like there's kind of like a rush coming through my body. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. It will feel somewhat warm, tingling, um, but I can tell there's some type of nudge that either something is coming, I need to prepare for something, um, that type of thing. So I generally get that. And sometimes the question isn't really when it comes to um, saying to God, okay, in this season, what's next? But maybe it's a question you might have, I would think. What keeps coming back to my heart? What is this that keeps coming back to me, right? And if that resonates with you, I want you to just make a note in your journal um, of what that is. Like if you realize, oh yeah, you know what? I keep thinking about X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'm gonna use this one. Many people probably use it. Let me give you an example. Hey, this whole thing about winning the lottery, gosh, that keep coming back to my head for some reason. So, what do I need to do now? Do I need to put together a plan? Like if I was to win the lottery, it's a great example. What do I plan to do with the money? What's the plan? Right? It's one thing to win the lottery and you win all this money, but if you don't have a plan on how you're going to utilize this money to reinvest, no doubt to help others, because I hope that that would be your thought process. And what exactly would you do to help others? Because there's so many areas that you can give in that, and so many people that need help. Like put a plan in place, right? Have a written plan, I would say. If that recurring thought is that you're going to come into money or you're going to win the lottery or whatever it is. Okay. I just gave you an example, but you know what those reoccurring thoughts are in your mind right now. Right. And I want you to just write it down in your journal. Or when you have that thought again, maybe you can't remember quite this moment, but if you have a recurring thought, write it down. Okay. Write it down immediately. Put it on paper. Okay. So we realize we don't need the full picture. Here's the permission many people need to hear, right? Your next step does not require the full plan. Reclaiming your power, all right, only requires your willingness to align, right, with that next step. Trusting, we talked about that, trusting without having all of the clarity that you desire. And just honesty right through the process, right? You're not being asked to leap 10 steps ahead. So calm your nerves and your anxiety, you know, because you don't know everything, right? You don't know the full plan. You're being invited, you're just being invited to take one faithful step in this season. And that step might look like a small conversation, a boundary, right? Maybe a decision that you need to make, or maybe that step is just a pause so you can listen, right? That you can listen and hear and learn. Or that small step could be yes, I am open to restarting, I'm open to a new beginning. Small steps, right? Still move you forward. So even if it's small, there is movement in the in between, in the in between season that you're currently in. Now, listen up. There's an author by the name of Mel Robbins. Now, I hinted to this in the first podcast about there's a certain amount of seconds that you really need to respond or act on when you have these thoughts about vision, you maybe a business, maybe it's a job, whatever it is, owning your home, whatever it is, okay? There is a 5-second rule. So Mel Robbins is the author of the 5-second rule, right? It's a book and it really is a way, a strategy to mitigate, your anxious thoughts that you're having, any thoughts of doubt and fear. And we know fear is logic without faith, right? So Mel has this framework where you have 5 seconds before doubt actually starts talking. So there's 5 seconds before doubt starts talking. And that is the moment your doubt critic will say to you, what if I fail? Who do I think I am? And during that time, you need to flag that that's the moment you need to move, right? So you begin the countdown to stabilize your thoughts, right? Those thoughts of doubt. And it's best to say this out loud, right? So your mind won't begin to program that, right? So as soon as you have a negative thought, let's do it. Let's do a test here, right? What if I fail? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Action. What is the action or the new thought that will replace that thought of anxiety, doubt, and fear? You need to act. When you count down to 1, there should be some type of action. If It's a go action, it's a do it action, or just simply a new thought. I can go back to school. I can learn new things. I can learn AI. And I'm just throwing some examples out there. You can fill in the blanks, right? So it's not the whole plan, right? It's not the finished outcome. It's just the next step of obedience, right? Just being obedient, taking the next step and conquering those thoughts of doubt, right? So the 5-second rule, when you get a chance, you can pick up her book. I know Walmart has it, definitely Amazon, but it's a really great technique to use anytime doubt surface or anxiety surface where it's just taking control. You're sweating, heart palpitations. You might even feel it in your body, but you are really fearful. You're afraid, and that anxiety is taking over your mind to the point where there's a stronghold, right? It keeps you um, imprisoned in your mind that you can't and you won't. And who do you think you are? All right. So the next obedient step, to combat this, once you do your countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. That action might be to send the email, to write the note, to register for the class, to make the call, to block the time on your calendar. Remember, momentum follows movement. If there's no action, then of course there's no momentum, there's no movement, and there's no change. Because doubt consumes your mind and your body. We all worry and we all have some level of self doubt, right? It's a habit of thinking, right? It's pretty much it's a default of thoughts that we have, right? That we might worry about some things and might be doubtful on some things we think we can't do. Habits, the habits that you repeat over and over again um, without paying attention, those habits you have to pay attention to, right? Because those habits that we're not paying attention to and we keep repeating over and over again, and those thoughts, you know, winds up being automated behavior. Same thing when we talked about the critic in the mind is when those thoughts, pop up in your mind. And I'm just reminded, I might as well say this very quickly. On the last podcast, I had an opportunity to speak with somebody following the podcast, and we were talking about a few things. And I brought up something that I felt like this person would just be so fantastic at because I can just tell from the testimony that they have that I know of that they would be terrific if they did X, Y, and Z. And immediately her response was, "Oh, somebody already did that. They don't need me to do that. Ain't nobody." It was interesting to hear it played out how fast her mind had that automated thought, right? That type of behavior um, to, something that she would really be fantastic at, right? And obviously she thought about it, but um, she had those thoughts that maybe, yeah, no, I don't think that's me. But we have to pay attention because again, our habits happens to be those things that we don't even pay attention to, but it's automated behavior. So there's also anxiety. And what happens when your habit spirals out of control, automated behavior, um, it creates strongholds, right? Like I said, you'll feel it in your body. Maybe your heart is racing. Maybe you're sweating, and you're really your whole body thinks that if you make the next step, that the earth is going to explode, right? But that is not true. So try the 5-second rule. See if that works for you. Get the book. There's more in there. That I think will be beneficial, especially if you're someone who goes through a lot of anxiety, right? And if you require, more help, I would say don't be embarrassed about getting more help around that so that you can be free to take the next step. All right. So here's where I want us to just pause. All right. And I want you to ask yourself the following three questions. Hopefully, you have a notebook. Or if not, you can replay this podcast, right? And listen to these questions again. Right. So, what chapter, I want you to ask yourself, what chapter in my life has clearly ended? Right. So, identify the chapters in your life, chapter, right? Or chapters have ended, right? And see if you can name it, right? And if you can't, no big deal. But if you have a sense of something that you know is done, maybe it's a relationship, maybe, and when I say relationship, it could be, you know, a personal relationship with someone, or it could be a working relationship, or it could be, you know, with an organization, whatever it is, right? What feels uncertain, but also quietly hopeful? What feels uncertain, but also quietly hopeful for you? And then the last question is, what is one small step where you feel a nudge, right, to take, right? You feel a nudge, one small step, no matter what it is. And maybe it's, I better get my real estate license. I'm just throwing something out there. It's a small step. All right. A real estate license is no small fee itself. And when I say that, it's a challenge to be consistent in studying and so forth. But if that's the nudge and it says take this step to get your license, there's more than you can do more than sell homes when it comes to a real estate license. I will say that. So you'll be clear on, with a real estate license, what can I do? But anyway, I'm getting back to the nudge, right? If that's a nudge, then write that down. All right. So you got those three questions. What chapter in my life has clearly ended? What feels uncertain right now, but also hopeful? And then what is one small step that you feel you can take right now? You don't need to answer everything today, all right? You just need to stay open, okay? Remember that. Reinvention always feels exciting at first, right? Sometimes it feels quiet, it feels lonely, and it feels like you're standing still. And for me, I don't like standing still. I always like to just keep progressing and progressing and progressing and doing something. And standing still is tough for me, all right? But stillness is not absence, it's preparation. It's all about preparation. And if you're in that place right now, hear this, brothers and sisters. Your future isn't missing, it's unfolding. And you are being guided even when it feels quiet. And the next chapter begins with trust. It begins with you because remember, no one can do this but you. You have to take the steps. Nobody can take the steps for you. You have to do the work with flagging those negative things in your mind. You have to be the one to do this for yourself. All right. Reclaim your power and build your confidence. How? Every action that you take builds your confidence. That is a skill, right? That is a work in progress. But every action that you take, you'll become more and more confident. Your discernment will be more clear. You can hear more clearer. You'll know what you need to do next, that next step, and you won't waver. You'll act upon it. All right. So there are, I see three questions that was sent to me, and I want to make sure that I addressed it. I address it right now. Question one says, what if I take the next step and it turns out to be wrong? That's a good question. All right. And that's such an honest question, I would say, and a common one. Here's what I've learned: God doesn't waste sincere steps. Not every step is permanent, but every step is instructive. And sometimes clarity doesn't come from standing still, it comes from movement. So if your heart is aligned and your intention is faithful, even a detour can become direction. All right. And I hope that that is helpful for you. Let me know. All right. So my next question is, how do I know if I'm waiting in faith or just afraid to move? Hmm. That is a powerful distinction. All right. Waiting in fear, I think, feels heavy. It's tense. It's filled with self-criticism. So pretty much, identifying when you are afraid, what are the symptoms pretty much that you experience. And I think it's a heaviness, it's tense, it's filled with self-criticism. You're just saying all the negative things wrong about yourself. Whereas I think waiting in faith, the characteristics, all right, it feels quiet, but you're attentive. And one question helps clarify the difference, right? I would say ask yourself, am I avoiding movement or am I preparing for it? Faith filled waiting still listens, it still prays, and it still stays open. So fear filled waiting shuts down. All right. So the difference between, knowing what's a faith move and what's fear is what you should be paying attention to. Right. So jot down those characteristics of each. And I I would say those characteristics, yeah. And pretty much, what you're experiencing behind each will help you determine, you know, which one you're experiencing. Pay attention to which posture that you're in. All right. So I hope that makes sense to you. Let me know if you don't, or you need me to help you further vet that out. All right. So my last question is, what if I don't hear anything at all? So my response to that is silence doesn't mean absence, right? Some seasons are not about instruction. They're about strengthening trust. Often what feels like silence is actually space. Excuse me. And that space is for rest, it's for healing, and space for clarity to form, right? If you are unsure, then ask yourself, what brings peace when I think about moving forward? What brings peace when I think about moving forward? All right. Thank you all. They were great questions. Um, and I do appreciate you taking the time out just to share because I know that transparency sometimes is not always easy, but it's going to help someone else who has the same question. All right. So thank you for your participation with that. Now, in closing, I need you to know that it is important that you have faith, right, in your future and your reinvention. You have to believe in your reinvention. When an old chapter closes and the next one feels unclear, remember clarity is not your responsibility, but being faithful, right? Faithfulness is trust, trust that what feels unfinished is actually unfolding. You're not lost, you're being led, and honor this in between season. Stay open, stay willing, and take the next faithful step when it appears. Until next time, breathe deep, quiet the noise, and keep becoming. Our next podcast airs on Sunday, February the 8th at 7 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this podcast with others. That'll be so awesome if you do that, guys. And last but not least, I know you guys can see some merch here. I am testing. Let me see if I am testing merch products right now. And right now I have the thermal. So if this is something you think you might be interested in, let me know. All right, by putting it in the chat. Or you can reach out to me by email. My email right now is KAYY Hadley at gmail.com. So you can always reach out to me by email to let me know if you're interested in the thermal. All right. All right. That concludes our Faith and Future Reinvention podcast for tonight. Have a good evening.